Hello, everyone. Ron again. And it's been a while, right? So, to address anyone who may be concerned with why I haven't put out in a video in so long, the simple answer is that my computer broke. I was not really in a position to fix it yet, but I was using a laptop and it was plugged in a lot of the time because I used it very often. So the battery started to swell, it was breaking the casing, and when I went to get it checked, they told me that if I kept on using it, the battery could explode. So I had to wait and I wasn't able to make videos or really work on music the way I would have liked to. So that's where I was at. There were other things that came up like health concerns, but that was the biggest part of it. But now things are slowly getting back on track and it's not so crazy anymore. So I've got a new computer and it's a desktop this time. So it hasn't exploded yet and that's a good thing. I'm very satisfied by that. So it's good. Very good. So, with that being said, the purpose of this video is to talk about the ways that you might write a drum part. And I'm going to try to make this simple, even though it's a bit abstract. So, to start off, I will offer you that you might consider writing a drum part analogously and think about it as if there were people playing it, right? So, if you were a snare drummer in a marching band or a drum corps, you'd be responsible for playing just the snare drum part and you would be responsible for playing that part well. But there would be bass drummers and perhaps tenor players or quint players, and they would each be responsible for their part. But when those parts come together, they make one entire part. Similarly, if you were to play a drum set and people ask this question, how do you play seven instruments at one time? You don't. You play one drum set. That's the key. The way the person playing the drum set views it differently than the person who's not a drummer. So the other person sees seven instruments, but you see one with seven pieces, perhaps. So if we open up the step sequencer, we can think about timing in the same regard. So if you think about breaking a 4/4 measure into 16/16 notes, then it makes more sense. Now let's say during each of those 16th notes, you could have an instrument play or you could have it not play. So, similar to creating a melody where you would also have the choice for a legato sound, which is one that's held out, you want to think about the amount of time that you want to cover in the measure specifically. Because sometimes there are measures where you have nothing and then you're using silence. But in the event that you have a fast paced rhythm, it's reasonable to want to cover every beat. So sometimes when people are creating music, they think about it in that same sense of like, well, I want the entire measure to feel full. I don't want there to be a beat where nothing is playing. But when there's going to be a drop, they might have that because when the beat drops, it contrasts with the silence. So if nothing is playing and then it goes to like the loudest part that it's going to be after it has some buildup in the previous measures, then that part is made to feel more louder and it feels like it knocks more based upon the comparison to silence. But this is to say that you could have any individual part of the measure and it could have something playing there, or you could also use silence to your advantage. And to break this down in a way that it makes sense, at least that it makes sense to me, hopefully to you, I made a simple beat. So, playing from the beginning, let's listen to what it sounds like real quick. When we think about it, and the way that I was writing this beat, the way I was thinking about it was that each part is doing its own thing. And that thing is important. But in terms of the way that those things come together, it wants to be a whole so that nothing is too overpowering and the entire beat should be catchy. Right. So maybe there's one thing that's playing more than the other thing, like one instrument or one drum rather, that's playing more than the others, and it might be playing faster too. But each thing is contributing to it in such a way that it's not playing more than it needs to during the measure, but it's also not playing less. So usually what stands out the most is like the kick drum. Listening to the kick drum is playing this. Conversely, you got something like the snap. It's just playing this. Then this one is particularly interesting because, in a manner of speaking, it's playing more often than the rest of them. So the snap is only on like beats 2 and 4. You've got this playing on every beat. It's playing on the half notes to give you the half note feel. So this one is playing on the upbeats, right? Put the two together, you can see that when we combine it with the snap, every beat is represented. So just thinking about that, this accounts for the quarter notes because there's an eighth note beat being played, and you have the upbeats, 1 and 2 and 3 and like that. But you've also got the downbeats where the snap is hitting. So a person listening to just these three, they feel the presence of the quarter notes and the eighth notes. But what about the other things? What makes it catchy? And what fills out the rest of the space? Something has to provide that syncopation that makes it feel catchier than just quarter notes. Because a lot of the time when you only play quarter notes or eighth notes, it sounds really stagnant. So there's got to be something in between that. And that is either 16th notes or triplets. And in this case, it has some swing to it. So that's where the catchiness comes from. But the point was to fill every beat. So you see this thing right here, which I forgot what it's called, but it really is bouncy, right? If I go back, add this. Now you can feel some of that catchiness being produced. But this is playing in its own unique spots throughout the measure. It's not trying to consume the areas where the others are playing. So it's filling in a different portion of the 16th notes and also a different portion of the spectrum. We'll get to that a little later. We've got these doing the same. Now this bell, especially, is playing a jazzy type of rhythm. So you can see that there's some instruments that are designated, like these. And this. Specifically this one especially, because it plays more often than the rest of them, but it's not taking up the space where the snap is. See? And that last thing is weird. It gives character to the song. I like that. You know, so you have these instruments that sound more standard, such as these, and they take up a certain amount of time and a certain placement in the timing of the song with regard to where they're placed in the measure. Or you could express that as like they take up a certain number of 16th notes and not necessarily the others, but they take up a certain place in the frequency range and they have certain character. So where these sound normal, like instruments you expect, something like this that's a bottle cap is really weird, stands out for it. And of course, it's very subtle as not to overpower the main instruments because everybody expects to hear those main instruments, right? It's like when you watch a Spider-Man movie, sure, you enjoy the fact that there are other characters around him, like he's got a best friend, especially like in the recent ones that star, what is his name? It was like Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man No Way Home. I can't remember his name right now. But Spider-Man is the star of the film, and you're like, okay, he's got a girlfriend, whether it's Mary Jane or it's like Gwen Stacy. You're like, I enjoy her presence, but I'm here to see Spider-Man. And that's what these weird sounds are like too. They play their role, but it's not to overshadow the main parts that you came to hear. We could think of it as also according to the frequency spectrum, right? That each thing has their place. So if I open ozone, the equalizer, and actually should leave this open. I'm gonna have this quiet for right now. I'm just gonna show you. We've been thinking about this as you could think about it, let's say, if different people were playing one instrument, so each one of them plays a certain part. One person is playing different instruments on the drum set, and each part of it has certain timing that it consumes. And also, you can think of it as each one has a certain place in the frequency spectrum that it takes up. Obviously, when you're listening to a kick drum, you see how it's down here. The heavy part of it is down here, so it's low. The snap is in the middle, right? Anytime you have a cymbal or a shaker, those are going to be up here. So, and the same thing is true for the bell. So you can see all of these shaker sounds, they're all up here. And they provide that feeling of brightness that you want to have in your mix. They're easy to hear. But we've got, I went back to the beginning. We've got this bottle cap sound that is also in the middle, the same way that the snap is. But you see how it's a little bit lower, so they won't necessarily fight for space. So you have clarity between the two sounds as well. So there's a manner of like separation that is created, even though you've got all of this stuff playing at once, because each thing occupies its own space, but it also occupies its own timing. So it's like nothing is stepping on each other's toes. But at the same time, if I have this, you'll see that it does have some frequencies, like up here, and the snap dominates in those frequencies. But that's okay, because there are spaces where they overlap, but there are also spaces where they dominate their self. And then you can see the lower sounds, especially this weird sound, is kind of all over the place, even though most of it is up here. I hope it's helpful. I hope this makes sense. If there are any questions, please leave them in the comments, because I know like you can understand something yourself. And I didn't make a script for this video, so it's kind of difficult to figure out how to word it, you know? But you could think of things as they have to occupy their own space as if they were played by individuals that are coming together to play a song together. And you could make it so that they can share the same space, as in a part that's like this, where you see it has the upbeats. So then if you go to the hi-hat, the hi-hat also plays on the upbeats, but it's shorter. The shaker is a longer sound. And they don't interfere with each other for that reason. They share that space and they work together. You got weird sounds that are like bottle caps. And it's even at different pitches. It goes up and it goes back down because it has a subtle bit of strangeness that makes the song unique, you know? At the same time, these things are all taking up their own space in the frequency range. And to some degree, they share. But the fact that they're positioned differently as far as time is concerned, and you use instruments that vary throughout the spectrum, makes it so that everything fits together and it sounds nice. So then you don't have to think so much about one instrument being too loud or fighting with another instrument or this one is playing too much. They sound good as a whole. And I enjoy this beat. So I hope that you guys liked it too. I'll play it one more time so you can hear it real quick. With that being said, I hope that makes sense. I don't know if you heard that I just got a text message or something like that. Somebody communicating by phone. So it's good timing because the video is ending. But with that being said, thank you for watching. In between all the other things that come, I obviously will try to make more videos. So please leave comments because the comments are actually rather inspiring when you guys are like receiving help from a video. Then it's like, oh, it does help them. Then it's like, I'm doing this for some reason, rather than just for me. So I always enjoy that, especially when there's positive feedback. Of course, if you have any questions or video concerns, I mean, like topics that you want to discuss, if I know them, I'll make videos on them when I have the chance. And thank you for watching and tuning in as you do. Even if you just enjoy the content, you know, it all helps. So, that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace.